people that you're out there, something like that. The general rule is, twice a week is probably plenty, but it also depends on the social medium. So things like Twitter, there's a lot more traffic and it disappears faster. Twitter, you could probably get away with once a day without, and it's a dance between being out there and having presence and then annoying people where they leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're just trying to keep word of mouth out there or brand awareness, the twice a week is the general rule. However, if you've got like some type of event, like maybe you've got a big like interview, a live interview with some cool rock star or something, and it's this Friday at 6 p.m., that's something that you could be posting about every single day with increasing frequency. So you post once on Monday, twice on Tuesday, 3 times Wednesday, 4 times, because you're building up and constantly reminding, and you're not really going to alienate your fans that much because they should know, as long as you're clear, this is a one-time, time-sensitive issue.
Right.
And after Friday at 6 p.m., we're going to shut up again. They'll give you the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, yeah, I'm seeing a lot from you, and I have no interest in an interview with Mick Jagger. Wouldn't that be cool to interview Mick Jagger? So,
right.
But they'll give you a little more slack and say they'll be able to tell that it's a time sensitive event. So then you can have that kind of that crescendo buildup. Yes. So does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you so much, Steve.
Yeah. You really have to sit back and the first is, what's the nature of the campaign?
Okay.
Really
Thank
good.
You, Steve.
That's a really, really, really good question.
Thank you.
I have a question if no one else does.
Go for
it. So hopefully other people will be in the same boat here. We have social media for our organization everywhere. We have Monona Community Media overarching Facebook page. We have a Facebook page for our low power radio station. And then we have Twitter accounts for both of those, though I will admit we do not use Twitter just because we haven't got on board with that. And our YouTube channel is Monona Community Media. And we haven't really engaged in Instagram yet, though we do have pages for both of those entities on Instagram. It feels like a lot and too much, and you mentioned that earlier, pick one thing and go with it. Except the interesting part is for us, our Monona Community Media Facebook page is more like, I will say, the parents and people interacting in the Monona community, whereas our radio station is a lot of different people from outside Monona as well. I've often thought of merging the two, but I wouldn't want to alienate or screw up what we have going on by doing that.
Yep.
So I guess I'm just wondering, maybe for other people who have a lot of different social media and maybe for different things, but within the same umbrella, how do you navigate that? And is it worth merging, and how, that type of question, I guess?
Well, I'll just say first of all, does anyone want to jump in and answer that? Okay. And feel free if anyone else, you're the experts on this. So this is the one thing that a lot of so you have to think about this as, again, brand voice. You have different voices to your brand. So ESPN and ABC Television are both owned by Disney, okay? But they don't call it Disney Sports and Disney TV because ESPN has a specific audience and a goal, and ABC Television has a different audience and a goal. Is there overlap between them? Sure there is, but each has their own set identity with their own social media presence to reinforce the brand. And the brand is not Disney Sports, the brand is ESPN. So keeping them separate, like what you're doing, yes, if you're not seeing that, if maybe 20% overlap, Okay. Oh, that's not a reason to put them together. If 80% overlap, sure, that's probably going to make it easier for you to focus more on the content, because that sounds like, from what you've said to me, you've got all these medium out there that you're not doing anything with. That means you don't have the time and energy to create compelling content for each of them. That's the number one problem people have with social media. So it sounds like you're doing the right thing. But I would wonder if say that I go to your YouTube channel and I don't see fresh content, that's not going to look good for you. So, there's almost a saying that it's better not to do social media than do it poorly. That doing social media poorly is worse than not doing it. If I go to a business's Facebook page and it hasn't been updated in 6 months, so that's a bad thing. So part of it is struggling with having a presence. Like you said, you have Twitter accounts, but what's on them? I mean, there's nothing wrong with like locking down Twitter accounts and then not doing anything. I teach marketing. We were brainstorming classes 10 years ago, and I just thought, I teach marketing. Someone's already got that. I looked at my phone and nobody had it. So I quickly, in this meeting, took it. And I sat on that Twitter account for 3 years and did nothing with it until I started teaching an advanced social media class, and I wanted to use a Twitter feed. Well, guess what? I just happened to have I Teach Marketing sitting over here in this drawer, and I just whipped it out, and there it is. So there's nothing wrong with going out and claiming these domains, but you really have to ask, is just having them out there without doing anything causing you damage? Now, maybe you could create some type of placeholder content, either a video or a post that you can pin to the top. Do you know what that means when I say pin to the top? A lot of social media feeds allow you to like have one post that always sits at the top. So that's always the first thing that people see. And maybe it's a generic thing, an about us type posting. So at least that's people's first impression. And then when you get like something that's really cool, you can just unpin it, put the new stuff up there. And then once the window of time for that content to be fresh starts to expire, you go back and pin up your, the main one. It might be a way to, but I mean, here's the other thing too, is I'm assuming you are like, do you know how many YouTube followers you have? That's easy to track. Is that number going up or down? Are you recording it? Is somebody out there writing this down on a spreadsheet and saying, in the month of August, we have this many, in the month of September, this many, October, this many? So you have historical data that shows, are you trending up? Are you trending down? Are there times of the year that you spike and then go down? Because maybe there's a reason that I might want to engage with you in the month of October, because maybe my local community does a lot of Halloween stuff and I love Halloween. So I really want to know what's going on in the month of October, but the rest of the year, I don't really care. Okay. So is there a spike certain times of the year? Tracking this stuff and then sitting back and just looking, this is marketing research, and a lot of people freak out because they don't like numbers, but it's not really like analytics. It's really just looking for like patterns. So that might be something that you just might want to do. It's a nice tool. Now, granted, you got to give yourself probably 6 months of recording this stuff before you're even going to get any usable patterns. But it's never too late to start. But really, I mean, just try, and you're always going to lose followers. It just, people move in and out of the area. Okay, that's a reason why I'm not going to follow you. If I move to Idaho, I'm not going to be following a Monona media outlet unless I really want to keep track of what's going on at home or something. So don't freak out when people say, "Oh my God, we had like 3 people unsubscribe to our email." How do you know they didn't move away? Okay, it may not be the content of the email, but at the same point too, maybe it pissed them off and or you annoyed them because it's the 47th email they've gotten in the last 3 days. So I've made the mistake of donating to political accounts in the last 10 days. So as a result, I've been spending 2 days unsubscribing to email lists. Not that I don't want to continue to donate. It's just I'm already donating. Don't send me 3 emails a day. I don't have time for that. So it makes sense? Yeah, but I mean, yeah, what you're talking about is a very, very common issue. But yeah, track it, write it down, track it. It's you'll be surprised some of the insights you can learn just by having an Excel spreadsheet, just with monthly or weekly, reporting or analytics.
Hey, Steve, it's Jake. This is what I was going to ask you in the last session. And I think it kind of goes along well with what we're talking about right now, because I know as a municipality, we track just about everything we can so that we can justify what we do when people come and want to know what it is we're up to. So we do track a lot of, likes, follows, YouTube subscribers, how many videos did we produce for this or that.
Yep.
And that all goes into a budget book that we present to council every year so we can kind of justify our existence.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about what people call vanity statistics versus statistics that really matter? And the for instance that I always think of is, and I think it's different now, but it used to be that Facebook would report a video view of someone watched for like 3 or 4 seconds, which I always thought was kind of an irrelevant way of reporting a view, because that could be someone who scrolled, accidentally set their phone down, and then picked it back up and kept scrolling.
And
So
it inflates the numbers.
Talk about, I guess, which statistics are the most solid, and as far as like justifying our actions on a social media platform to someone who maybe has oversight over our budget or oversight over our department, what do you think are the most effective ways to kind of show how valuable you are?
So it's really good that you brought up the idea of how is this stuff measured, because there's no consistency. And this is a problem because, YouTube might say you have to watch the video for 8 seconds for it to count. And Facebook might say 4 seconds. And by the way, I'm just making up those numbers there. I actually don't know what they actually are. So part of that would be to say, well, if it is going to be Facebook, and they change constantly. And this is why I don't have these numbers right on my head, because I've learned them in the past. And since I've learned them, they've revamped how they do things. But if someone came to me and said, Steve, we're going to use Facebook and we're going to use video on Facebook, I would go onto Facebook's page and read up. I'd read up on it and find out how exactly is this stuff being recorded. And because again, a lot of people might say, oh, we have 1,000 likes on our Facebook page. Yay, that's a great number. Okay. But who are those people? You can go in and look at demographics. To me, if you're using Facebook or Instagram, the ad manager tool is so incredibly easy to learn. So Facebook and Instagram make it the easiest for anyone to do it. Google also has really good analytics, but their learning curve's a little steeper. But you definitely should invest the time to learn how to read these analytical reports and then dig into the demographics, because you might find out that you have 1,000 likes, which sounds really cool, but then you find out that 900 of them are people over the age of 60, and you're trying to sell Mountain Dew. Okay, that you got a problem, because 90% of your customer base is never going to buy your product. So the ability to go in, so things like likes, followers are, I think, what you're calling vanity statistics. It's stuff that sounds really cool and it gets reported. It's like, what is the cost of a Super Bowl spot? You always hear every year that CBS is charging $4.6 million for a 30-second spot. Nobody actually pays $4.6 million for a spot. That assumes you're going to run it one time and never advertise on CBS, and you want that to run in the first quarter of the game. If those are the parameters, yeah, it's 4.6 million. Nobody does that. Everybody has a multiple year deal with CBS. Okay. So I think knowing the statistics and what type of reporting is available, because the other thing too is you might find some insights that are really fascinating. Like for example, I do theater as a hobby, community theater, and there is a belief, and I do my stuff at the Bartell Theater in Madison. It's a little more edgy. So everyone says, well, we appeal a lot to younger theater people versus, typical shows at the Overture Center. Okay, so that was the belief that we should be talking to 25 to 35-year-olds. We looked at our social media digital presence and found the average age of our patrons was 58. Okay, so people's assumptions that because their friends are coming to see their shows and they're 25 was that everybody was 25. The data showed a totally different story. So me, as the chair of the marketing committee, I stopped talking to the 25-year-olds and started talking to the 60-year-olds. And all of a sudden we saw a big increase because we had data. And believe me, I pissed off a few people who said, well, you're abandoning the 25-year-olds. And I'm like, no, I'm not. You can still talk to them. Okay. But I'm going to go fishing where there's a much bigger pond of fish over here. And I had data that backed it up. And I took it to the executive board and I said, you need to give me money to do a paid campaign because there's a bunch of 60-year-olds that don't know we exist. And we did that, and we tripled our Facebook presence in 6 months. And we spent about $500 only doing it. So to me, that was money well spent. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And I would just say that was kind of the struggle we went through because we were trying to identify some KPIs that we had to put in a spreadsheet that we would turn in. So we were trying to figure out, okay, which, you stack the deck a little. You're like, which one of these is going to go up every year?
Yeah.
But we were trying to figure out, but which of these really tells the story of the efforts that we're going to increase our reach, not to use that as the only metric that works, but that's one that we watch because it kind of signals, they're going to ask, well, how many people are we? It's what they ask with our cable channels, which we can never tell anybody because we don't have viewership numbers for that.
Mm-hmm.
With streaming and on demand, we can give that data now. But the question always is how many people are seeing this? How effective are we in communicating our message?
Right.
And so that's what we went hunting for, which we wound up using reach as one of them on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Engagement is a key one.
Yeah, just
really
understanding that they're all kind of imperfect, that you can't just take one and say, well, this is the one to watch, Yeah.
And I've always looked at stuff like that as estimates. It's no different that I spent many years in television. That's actually back in the 90s. I worked for Channel 3 and, everything was ratings. Well, if you look at how Nielsen measures ratings, it is statistically more accurate to go to State Street and just ask people as they walk by, what shows did you watch last night? That's actually more statistically accurate than what Nielsen delivers, if you really look at it from a mathematical formula. But it's all that, especially pre-internet, it's all that we have. So that's the thing about these metrics. It's still not perfect. And I think the whole thing of like autoplay, how Facebook's default setting on your phone is auto-playing video ad, that's done on purpose because that way an advertiser is seeing, I don't want to say inflated numbers, but it looks better to an advertiser that Facebook is working, and then you're going to spend more money with Facebook. So these mediums like Facebook and Twitter, their default settings are always going to be what benefits Twitter, not what benefits the customer, okay? Within reason, because if they completely fail, then the customers will abandon them. But always remember that is things like autoplay, those are good questions to ask. Is autoplay counted in this? If it is, how long do you have to go through it? YouTube just completely revamped their paid system of how you get money, the revenue. So if you're a content creator on YouTube and you're getting revenue from the advertising or revenue share, they completely just revamped it where I think it's, you have to have a minimum of like 5,000 followers, and then you have to produce a minimum of X amount of hours each month, or you won't even qualify for the advertising program. Because the whole influencer concept is becoming so red hot. Everyone wants to be the next Kim Kardashian, okay, but keep their clothes on. But everyone is looking at that as a business model and looking at, do you know who Ninja is? Do you know what Twitch? Twitch is basically like live streaming video gaming. This has become like, live streaming video gaming is a bigger business than the NFL. And a lot of people don't realize, because people still think video gamer are 16-year-old boys in their parents' basement. The average hardcore gamer is 38, and it's 50-50 male-female, okay? So there's a lot of money in that industry. But if you didn't know the metrics and the data behind that, and I love using that because I talk about the video industry, and that's my first question is who is a gamer? And everyone says 16-year-old boys in their parents' basement, drinking Mountain Dew. Okay, 25 years ago, that's what was a gamer. Today, it's more likely that mom is playing Candy Crush Saga on her iPad 10 hours a week, and then spending a lot of money to get those extra jewels, okay, than her kid. So metrics and data. But yeah, you have to explore. And again, everyone's different. Twitter's different than how Instagram does it. So there's no apple to apple comparison. But for you, and here's the thing is you got to know the real data, and then you also have to know which data to show the people who are going to write you a check. Because I think that's really what you're asking, is how to get more funding. So that's a thing is that vanity number is not necessarily bad, because if you're showing some really good numbers, that might be enough to justify what you're asking for. But as the person that has to be in the trenches, you have to know how realistic that stuff is, and be ready for those questions. Because if people say, well, you've been talking about that we have 10,000 followers, what's the average age? You should know that. And if you don't, and if you have somebody who's social media savvy who asks you that question, that's an easy one. Knowing the average age of your social media, that literally, a person who follows you on social media, you can find out that number in less than a minute. So there's no excuse why you shouldn't know basic demographics from off the top of your head. But again, I've worked with, a lot of businesses that started out by saying our customer is a 60-year-old man, and it turns out it's a 25-year-old woman. So now that's a pretty extreme difference in lifestyle. So, but you gotta follow the data, because that'll tell you the truth. I'm melting your brain. I can see it on my screen. It's just melting away.
Yeah, you said I'm thinking about funding, and in a way I am. I'm just always thinking about ways to justify us as an organization it's more of a survival justification of what we do thing than it is.
That's fine. It's budget. Justify why you're part of the budget. Yeah.
But the approach and the way you compile your value and your pitch isn't very different between those two scenarios.
Right.
Your delivery might be, but.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, though, in marketing data, it is, and this is an ethical dilemma, is that if there's a story you want to tell, you probably can find data that can be presented in a way to back up your story. But that's not really what data is supposed to be for. Data is supposed to be for the truth. So that's an ethical dilemma but the more you know about it, the more, I think it's better to know the real story, and then decide how you want to present that data in an ethical way. But But I mean, certainly there might be things about growth. You might say, you know, we're trending up in a certain demographic or a certain age group, or we're you know, maybe in you're from Oshkosh, you said maybe there's a big push to get more involvement in minority organizations. Okay, that's obviously with the summer we've had. That's a big topic. Do you have data that really reflects, you know, is that a growth area for you? You know, that's something that, you know, I think a lot of organizations are saying, wow, you know, maybe we haven't been doing as good as we could be doing in terms of minority issues, but how do we do this? And maybe you can step up to the table and say, here's data that shows where we're at versus where we can be at. So, you know, why don't we try something and see if we can go, and that would be a KPI. If we're here and we're going to try to get to here and we only get to here, well, at least we're not down here. So that's I'm full disclosure, I'm a data nerd. So I love data, and I love, and not necessarily numbers. I like what's called, we call it digital storytelling. It's basically looking for patterns and shapes. It's almost like a Rorschach test. It's like, what do you see in this picture? But to me, it's not a series of numbers. It's like, why is this moving this direction? Or why is this up here and down here? It's a visual thing for me. I see it on the screen and I just sit back and I look at it, and then I can start to see things and I go, what is this? And a lot of times that can take me to a solution, or it can take me to a problem that I can fix. So that might be something that you really want to go into it. One last thing I want to tell you about is Google the term sentiment analysis. Okay, this is a newer form of marketing research where now here's the hard part: is good sentiment analysis you got to pay for. There are tools out there that has free version, but you know, you get what you pay for. It's the whole idea of, as people are posting things online, what is the sentiment behind it? That's why it's called that. For example, if I go onto Twitter and I say, I went to McDonald's and it was sick, okay? Now me, as a 53-year-old male, that means I puked last night, okay? But if my 18-year-old male student posted the exact same thing, he had a good time, because the word sick means different in the context, in the sentiment of how it's used. Now, if you just do a search on how often the word McDonald's and sick is used, which you can easily do that, what is the context behind that? What is the sentiment? And is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? So there are companies right now that all they do is they measure sentiment analysis, and you can get a ranking that 47% of sentiment is positive today. And yesterday it was 46%. And the day before it was 45%. And now you're seeing an upward trend of sentiment. So companies like Apple, McDonald's, Nike, they're always looking at, you know, how many people like us, how many people are mad at us, and how that is changing. And as long as their sentiment is in the positive range of 70% or above, they're happy. But if their sentiment drops down below, that should trigger an alarm that the general public has an issue. So I find sentiment analysis as a marketing tool to be fascinating, because it doesn't just look at the tweet, I went to McDonald's, it was sick. It looks deeper and says, who put that out there? And, you know, because it's a young male, sick is probably used as a positive word, or it's an old guy, in which case it was a negative word. So it's a much more deeper psychological insight into data. So, but yeah, sentiment analysis is fascinating, but it's expensive because it's hard to do. So, okay, we're at 2:34. So I know we have about 5 minutes.
Like there's about 9 on the clock right now. So Deb must have gave us a little bit more time. If you have, do you have a countdown clock, Steve, on your screen?
Oh, I do. You're right. There is a countdown clock. So
Yep.
I will say this: I have a hard stop at 2:40 because I have class at 2:45. So
Got it.
yeah, so I at least have to definitely be out of here at 2:40. So, but still, that's another 5 minutes. So that's plenty of time for at least one or two more questions.
If no one else has a question, I've got one. Oh, it looks like we've got one from Peter.
Yeah, I thought, yeah, it just popped up. Yep.
Okay,
Oh boy.
sorry about that. Do you get
Oh wow, that's a good one. Yeah. Because people are always so polite in the online formats. So okay, so what to do about something like that? Because when you have something that is a health issue that's turned into a political issue, this is a kerfuffle of magnitude. Okay, so you don't want to, the general rule is to not delete stuff or censor stuff because people screen capture and then they post that you deleted it, and that just makes it even worse. Okay, so having pre-prepared crisis management postings that might deal with misinformation. So part of it is you have to sit back and go, how can people take this the wrong way? And then come up with maybe like some canned responses that you can immediately do what's called corrective marketing. So somebody posts something and says, well, that number was all fake. And then you can say, this number actually came from this official government source. Okay. So you can kind of counter the information with, like almost like real-time fact checking. But unless you can do it in real time, before you post something, you might want to sit there and say, how can people take this the wrong way? And maybe make a list of what could go wrong, and then have some prepared, maybe like, quick responses that you can quickly get out there. Now, certainly if the conversation goes off topic, becomes offensive, inappropriate, then as an organization, I think it's okay to kick people out and potentially ban them from your page, because there are people out there that have nothing else to do other than troll the internet and piss off people. Some of these people aren't even from America. Some of them aren't even human. Okay. I can tell you right now, yes, there are bots that follow channel3000.com, Madison.com, all the major news sources, and they're not real people. And all they do is post provocative, piss you off postings. And this is coming out of Ukraine. This is not a myth. This is not fake news. This is factually known that they exist. Okay. So part of the problem is being able to recognize them, identify them, and then get rid of them. Okay. Now, part of that is you really need to look at some of these people and maybe check their Facebook profile. Take a quick scan. If somebody's out there posting something really mad, quickly take a look at their profile. And if their profile is a picture of an eagle and there's no other, and their name sounds like a nickname, those are kind of the signs of fake accounts. And a person like that, I would be much more comfortable with kicking them off and banning them than somebody who obviously lives in your community, because you can see there's their picture at the local park that you recognize. I mean, some basic, understanding of what is a fake account and how to spot them is a good little lesson for everybody to kind of look into. So that's the thing is yeah, and especially it's just so sad that health has become politicized. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of censorship in any form. But certainly it's a tough thing, and I think being able to have prepared material that can correct statistics, that can direct people to other resources that back you up, and having that all made in advance is a pretty good strategy, especially if you know that you're about to put a post that's going to open up a can of worms. So now,
Okay, Steve,
yes.
there is another question, and I know you have to leave. Did you see the chat area there?
Of how often we should use and just one person being, okay, that one? I was just talking about the one about the COVID heated debate.
Okay,
And hopefully, I mean, that's something we could spend an hour on
Yeah.
that topic. The other question was, how often should we use social media? We did talk about that a little bit at the beginning. Should multiple people be in charge? Honestly, yes, just as a safety issue. Because if I'm the only person doing social media for an organization and I get hit by a bus, the organization is in trouble, okay? So if at worst case scenario, there should be multiple people with full access to it. The other thing too is, yeah, having the ability to have 2 or 3 people split up the work makes it easier for everybody to do their job. We do that in the marketing program at our school. There are 6 full-time teachers, and we have a Facebook page that we underutilize because we don't have time to really do it. And we have 3 teachers that absolutely refuse to touch it. So they don't have anything to do with it because they're like, I don't even want to be on this. So there are 3 of us, myself and 2 other, are the only ones that are admins on it. And we post when we can. Does it annoy me that the other 3 have taken this stance? Yes. Okay. But I also said, I don't want to be the only person, because if I get taken out by a car, it's locked in because who else can get access to it? So I insisted that at least one other person has full access, just as a security reason. So I mean, I think there's multiple reasons. Is yes, it's better to be able to spread it out. But if you're spreading out amongst a lot of people, it's good to have a conversation about voice. So you're all speaking as if it sounds like it's coming from the same person, just for consistency from the viewpoint of the consumer.
did everyone get a 2-minute warning? You did? Okay, some did, some didn't. I don't know.
I didn't notice one.
I see up in the right-hand corner, it says time remaining.
Yeah.
Right, it was
I didn't get a
supposed to
warning.
give people a warning that we're gonna be closing the room quickly here.
I did not receive that.
No, I just see the time.
Okay,
I'm seeing a countdown clock, but
yeah,
yeah, I do. Unfortunately, I do have to run. Yep, I have a whole class on social media to teach for the next 2 hours. So
Thank you, Steve. Thank you
Thanks,
very much for being here.
Oh, cool. This
Thank you.
this is fun. So I hope everyone found it worthwhile. And please, if people want to email me follow-ups, go ahead and have them send it out. So okay, cool. I'm sorry to run, but yeah, I gotta
Thank
life
you.
calls. So okay, cool. Take care.